How's it hanging, everybody? So let me say up front today that I really feel that I started this channel because of the Analogue Pocket, because of this little guy right here. When it was announced 2019, and when I started consuming more and more content around the Pocket here on YouTube and other avenues, I felt like there was something missing. Like there wasn't somebody on YouTube covering the Pocket like regularly. So that was one of my inspirations for starting this channel, was to be the person on YouTube who talked about the Pocket like pretty regularly. Just any little updates that we can get, any little new discussion points that we can talk about. I wanted to step in and be that. And then I got burned out. Like tail end of last year, you know, I was going pretty hard covering the Pocket. Every time there was a delay, every time there was something new to talk about, I would step in and give my 2 cents, but eventually that just got pretty old, right? So I decided let's just wait for the Pocket to actually get here, because I did get my pre-order in. Let's actually look at the thing. Let's have some extended time with it, and then let's talk about do a review. Talk about the Pocket. Can I recommend it? Is it all I thought it would be? All of those kinds of questions I would like to answer. But first of all, as we get into this, let me address the title of the video, the screen size of the Pocket, which is 3.5 inches. It is not a large screen. In fact, it's probably one of the smaller screens that you would use in your day-to-day life if this is something that you're going to be using. You know, you might have a smaller screen if you have like a smartwatch maybe, but it's going to be smaller. This thing's going to be smaller than your phone, smaller than your tablet, smaller than any, you know, laptop or anything like that, obviously, smaller than your Nintendo Switch, smaller than your PS Vita, your 3DS, all that kind of stuff. So it is a truly small screen. It's 3.5 inches, and that's actually the same size of this little guy, which is the RG350. This is a Chinese emulation handheld device that I picked up basically to tie me over until the Pocket got here. And it did a good job. I can't dock it to a TV. I think you actually can with some new firmware, but it's kind of weird and stretched out, so I didn't bother with it. But anyway, the screen size on this, I can't really compare it to the Pocket very easily, because even though they're the same size, the experience of using the Pocket is so much different. So for a little more context, and this is important, this may not apply to you, but I think this is worth mentioning, because I am the demographic for the Analogue Pocket. I truly am. I am 41 years old, and I grew up with the original DMG Game Boy. And I also had, you know, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance. I even had a Game Gear growing up, because yes, I was a spoiled child, I admit it. But so I am the ultimate audience. I am the ultimate demographic for the Analogue Pocket. And I'm 41, and my vision is good. I don't need glasses. I don't wear glasses. I have 20/20 vision, I think. But I have eye strain issues. Whenever I look at a small screen for a little too long, I have eye strain. And I was really worried that as great as the Analogue Pocket is on paper, as great as the early renders of it looked, as great as the screen itself is in so many different ways. I mean, it's truly a marvel of a screen this thing is. So even though all of that is the case, I was still a little bit shook by the small screen size. And let me just say, the screen size has been zero issue for me. Like I said, I've had the Analogue Pocket for 6 weeks. I've played many Game Boy games, start to finish. Of course, I've used the dock plenty, but I've still played handheld. Majority of the time has been handheld. And this screen size is really, I mean, it's a little bit hard to describe, because even though all of those issues that I described are definitely there, the pocket size and the screen size and everything, it's just so good, it's so perfect, it's the exact right size for the screen. Because it's worth noting, this is a very good upgrade from the original screen sizes, from the DMG Game Boy, Game Boy Pocket, any of that stuff. This is far and away a bigger screen. It's just small by today's standards. But when you start to play a Game Boy game, you can see that entire image vividly, clearly. All the text is there, every detail is there, screaming at your face. It is a very, very good experience to have this handheld, to view the screen, no problems whatsoever. It's a great screen, and it's a great screen size. I was worried about it, but it turns out that it's no problem at all. I will say that playing Game Boy Advance is, of course, the big kind of, it's not necessarily a letdown, it's not a bad thing. I think they did exactly the right thing by making this the more, what is it, 10:9 aspect ratio or something like that. It's basically a square, and that's exactly what it should be, because that's what the Game Boy was. And really, there's way more Game Boy Color and Game Boy games than there are Game Boy Advance games. Game Boy Advance, kind of not the greatest catalog of games, honestly. It was a very short-lived system. It basically ran from about 2001 to about 2004. Then the DS came out, so it was a very, you know, you think about how the Switch has already been around for 5 years. The Game Boy Advance was really only around for about 3 years before it got replaced. And that doesn't mean it was totally replaced. It still had, you know, a couple of Nintendo games coming out on the platform for a couple years after that, but it was basically pretty quickly phased out by the DS. I'm getting off track. But the screen on this thing is dazzling. It's dazzling. And the fact that you have these amazing filters, and I almost don't want to call them filters, but like when you're playing an original Game Boy game and you move into that puke green filter, for lack of a better term, the way that they actually executed each and every pixel to have just a small, like almost like gradient effect, and it's so impressive how they pulled that off, especially with Game Boy Color. Game Boy Color, the accuracy filter on it is just, it's such a trip. And honestly, I think the best one for me is Game Gear, because the Game Gear filter makes games look so freakishly much like Game Gear that it's almost alarming. It absolutely looks fantastic with the Game Gear filter. Just so nostalgic, so freakishly accurate to how I remember the original Game Gear looking, but also not as bad. It's like, it's more viewable, it's more visible, but it's just, it's so good. It's so good. The screen is an incredible star of the show here. And let's move on to the other big star of the show, the other thing that really makes this device very notable in this day and age, and that is the dock. There is a lot of, this is an interesting time for handheld video games, because since the Analogue Pocket was announced, we've had things like, you know, these super portable PCs coming out of China. We've had Android devices. We've had all of these devices come out, kind of still revolving around retro games, kind of like this RG350 here. But then we've also got like a new device like the Ein Odin or the Steam Deck. And these things have docks, and it seems like docks are definitely the way of the future. Like, if you're going to have a handheld, and you're a major company, this is a major operation, and you're going to make a handheld gaming device in 2022 and after, you really got to look into a dock option, because if you don't have a dock, it's just not going to hit the same. It's not going to hit the same. And I'm so happy that I have a dock for this Pocket. It works quite well. I will say there's been some issues with the dock, but first of all, let's just talk about the good, because it's mostly really, really good with this dock. So actually, the main point of reference is obviously going to be the Nintendo Switch dock, because it's so seamless. You just kind of plop it down, it magically finds that USB connection, and boom, you're immediately on your TV. You grab a Pro Controller, you grab Joy-Con, whatever you're using, and you start playing, and then you just don't miss a beat. And then you pick it back up, you play that way. It's perfect with the Nintendo Switch. And of course, you want to get as close to that as you possibly can with something like the Analogue Pocket. And it's not at the Switch, at the Switch dock level, but it's real close. It is very, very close. Like when I seat this thing, I pretty much immediately see a screen. I turn on my 8BitDo controller. It immediately pairs, no pairing issues of any kind. It's like freakishly quick with the pairing, with the controller and everything. Even just syncing it up for the first time, it just kind of like knows. It's a little freaky. But 8BitDo, if you don't have like something like this, an 8BitDo controller, and you're thinking about picking up a Pocket, then it might be a good idea to invest in an 8BitDo controller. I use mine all the time. I actually have a dedicated one for the Pocket now. But I mean, these things are great. You can use them with the Switch, you can use them with your PC, and of course you can use them with analog products, and they're very, very worth it in my opinion. The one that I have, the Pro controller that I have from 8BitDo, it works. It's just so perfect for the Pocket. I mean, it really is. And then you can change the button orientation, as can you on the handheld experience, to make it so where it's, you know, swapping B and A for these 3 buttons right here, however you want to do it. And that's great as well. It's good customization they offer. What else do I want to talk about with the Pocket? So let's talk about, once again, docking. Let's stay on that for a moment. So initially when the Pocket came out, there were no filters. Again, I use that term because I just don't have a better one. There were no filters for the TV docking experience. So when you dock it to your TV or your computer monitor or whatever you got, you're not going to have those filters like the puke green and the Game Boy Color, you know, lower saturation filter, or the Game Gear filter. You're not going to have those. But they've recently built those in with a firmware update, and they look really good. They don't look as good or as like freakishly accurate as they do on this mega high resolution Analogue Pocket screen, but for a 1080p output, I think they've done a very, very commendable job of recreating that kind of, that look and feel without having, you know, exactly 10 times the pixels of the original Game Boy to work with, and really make all those little granular changes to make it look like you know, that original hardware. So they can't quite get that close, but they've done a really good job, even with the TV and the filters on the TV at only a 1080p output. So bravo to the Analogue devs for that. That's amazing. So the experience of playing games on the Pocket is really going to depend on what you have. So if you have a ton of old handheld game cartridges, you're set. If you have tons of Game Boy Color, and that's what you want to play, then you're good. But let's just be honest, the elephant in the room is that everybody wants to have this thing and they want to play ROMs off of the SD card, right? And I do too. And we're not there yet. We haven't gotten that, you know, that particular jailbreak. And that is, of course, no criticism whatsoever to the Pocket or to Analogue or to those developers, because they came right out of the gate and they let us all know that the Analogue Pocket is not built for that kind of thing. It is built to play cartridges only. They've told us that over and over again, but we also know the history of Analogue and how that kind of thing has worked out in the past. We also see Analogue's their social media feeds where they're just showing you the most obscure possible Game Boy Color, Neo Geo Pocket games that no one has. No one has those cartridges. So, well, it'd be nice if we could play them somehow, right? And so let me just update you, and I'll leave a link in the description. There is a new project of basically taking IPS patches, patching them over your Game Boy and Game Boy Color ROM files so that you can play basically through the Game Boy Studio application here on the Analogue Pocket. You can play pretty much any original Game Boy or Game Boy Color game. That's not exactly true. The game has to be patched, and a person has to actually go in and make the patch. There's a couple people making these patches. They're really churning them out, and a ton of the Game Boy catalog is already covered. So, you know, that's really awesome that we're this early into the Pocket and we already have a fix for something like that. Now, if you want to play flash carts, I have a couple flash carts, and I'm lucky that they both work, but the reality is you're not going to have nearly as good of an experience if you're only using this thing with flash carts, because you cannot put the Pocket into sleep mode when you're using a flash cart. It will not let you. You have to power it all the way off. You cannot... what's the other thing? There's something else I'm not thinking of. Oh yeah, so save states are going to be real suspect. Like if you're using the save state feature on the Pocket, which hallelujah that this thing even has that capability, but if you're trying to do that with a flash cart, then good luck to you, Godspeed, because I've definitely had a few games that I've missed or lost my saves for, and that's really probably more the flash cart itself's issue than the Pocket's issue. But it's just worth pointing these things out. Really, the best experience that you can have with the Pocket is playing original games. Just like that. That is how the Pocket is advertised. That is what is going to get you the best experience. So if you have those games, go for it. If you don't have those games, but you really like Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, and you don't mind mostly playing those for now, then right now, March 2022, I can go ahead and greenlight that as a recommendation. Like if you're willing to patch some old Game Boy ROMs, you have to do them individually. There's an application right on the web that you can run in your browser. It doesn't send any data to any websites. It gives you the software capabilities right there in your browser, and the functionality's all there, and it just generates the patch for you. It lets you download it or save the patch, and then you stick it on your micro SD card and you're off and running. And I have quite a few games set up that way. Tetris. Yeah, hang on. We got to talk about the controls on the Pocket. We got to talk about the buttons. I left that out. I meant to talk about that earlier. Let's go ahead and knock that out. So the D-pad on the Pocket is probably the weakest aspect of all the buttons. All the other buttons are really good. The shoulder buttons are what you'd find on like a Nintendo 3DS. I'm clicking my 3DS's shoulder buttons. I'm clicking my Analogue Pocket's shoulder buttons. They feel remarkably similar. So you probably, if you've used a handheld device like this, like a Nintendo product or something, you know how these are going to feel. The shoulder buttons, that is. The face buttons, like the 4 action buttons on your right, they feel very good. They have a nice amount of travel. They're not too firm. They're not too loose and wobbly. They're just a solid action button like you would get from an 8BitDo product, let's say. And then there's the D-pad. The D-pad has a kind of a convex shape. Is that right? Is it convex or concave? I can't remember. But basically, it dips in the middle. Like basically the D-pad dips in the middle, and then the actual directions are slightly raised into a little bit of an arc. And so I've used D-pads like that before. Most similarly to me, it feels like a Nintendo Switch Pro Controller's D-pad, which in my opinion, I actually really don't like the Pro Controller's D-pad. The problem with this D-pad on the Pocket is that if you're playing like a game that requires very accurate and very intentional directional presses, like I have to press down. I cannot press down left or down right. If I hit a diagonal, I'm screwed. So I need to be able to very easily and confidently press that down direction and not have my, not have the input going crazy to one side or the other. So that's the main issue. Tetris is doable on the Analogue Pocket, but it's not the best. You're going to have a better experience playing Tetris when you have the Pocket docked and you're playing with like another controller, to be honest with you. If you're playing a really like twitch heavy action platformer game that has really, you really have to nail the accuracy of those directions, that's another time that it could sort of fail you, betray you in a way, this D-pad. But ultimately it's a very serviceable D-pad. It feels good, it feels professional. It's not my favorite kind of D-pad for the games that I gravitate towards most often, especially Tetris. So yeah, I'm feeling okay about that D-pad, but it's not the best. So I'll just leave it there. But definitely don't not buy the Pocket because it may not be your favorite D-pad, because it's actually an okay D-pad. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. What else? Okay. I think I've about covered everything, haven't I? Well, yeah. What I really want to talk about now is games, but I'm not going to do that on this video. I'm going to make some other videos where I make game recommendations for the Pocket, games that you might be able to play now if you don't have some super obscure old cartridge. So I'm going to have fun with that. Hopefully you guys get something out of it as well. But for now, this is really all I have to say about the Pocket. It's just, I feel like the Pocket is for folks like me. And is it as good as I hoped it could be? Yeah, it's still very early in the Pocket's life cycle. I hope to have this Pocket around for many years. I want this to be a fixture in my my gaming arsenal, I guess. I want it to be in there. I want it to be relevant. And I think that they've really built this thing for the future, kind of, because of how great the screen is, as I mentioned. It has been a common theme talking about the Pocket. The screen size is amazing, or sorry. The screen is amazing. It feels like it's like pretty durable. And I like that it doesn't have an analog stick, because if it had an analog stick, then you'd have to worry about like drifting and stuff like that. So I feel like the Analogue Pocket just has so many things going on that I really appreciate and I celebrate, I guess. And I hope it sticks around. You know, I'm going to be picking up the Steam Deck, and I'm sure I'm going to be doing some retro games on that. But what we're really hoping for, of course, folks who pick this Analogue Pocket up, if it can just play our SNES, NES, Game Gear, it already plays Game Gear, Master System, Genesis, Sega CD, Turbo CD, and then all of the games that it's supposed to play, like the handheld games. That would be, for me, the ultimate handheld device. We're just not quite there yet. Maybe I'll do another review of the Pocket, a jailbreak review, I guess, once that's actually out and available. I might talk about the Pocket again, but yeah, I would rather just move along. Let's talk about the games, because that's really what the Pocket is about at the end of the day anyway. We're going to talk about, I'm going to put some videos together for you guys to talk about and suggest games for your Analogue Pocket. I recommend the Analogue Pocket. If you're anything like me, if you like these retro games, if you have an affinity for Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, now is a perfect time to get a pre-order in for the Pocket, because by the time you get your Pocket, there will probably be even more possibilities, and it's just going to get better over time. So I recommend it, like I said. And anyway, guys, thanks for checking me out. I appreciate it. Take it easy.